Yes, happy spring to all. Um, Alrighty, well, I think I'm going to start. Abby, I don't hear you yet, but
Yep, I'm working on it. Sorry, I
okay,
had a computer issue. So I will start my slides now. Nice to see you all. Thanks for being here.
great.
Okay.
Talk to fireflies. Amazing. All right, well, welcome everyone to our Insights Exchange, where we're going to hear a roundtable of insights from our international members. And before we get started, for anybody I don't know, I'm Sophie Egan. I am co-director of the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. We are absolutely thrilled that you are taking the time to join us today. I think you will see it's well worth the time. And actually, sorry, Abby, I don't see it yet. I don't know if anybody else. Maybe you try once more. Um, You will, I want to thank you. Excellent. We're rocking and rolling on slides. So yeah, focus on our international members and collaboration opportunities. If you're just joining us, please type into the chat who you are and where you're calling in from. So I just want to start by acknowledging that it's a very stressful time in the university space on campuses for pretty much everyone. And I hope that today provides some either escapism, distraction, optimism, hope, and above all, inspiration and learning. There is so much taking up our time and attention, and you have a lot of choices of how you spend your time and attention. And we think that today you'll hopefully get some kernels of kind of what's possible for the future. And also just be, again, like really reminded that while we started in the United States and we have most of our membership in the US, we've actually, for a long time and going forward, we'll have even more really exceptional participation from universities outside of the US. So we can go to the next slide. One of the other things I wanted to do before we start is just mention some of our new members with a warm welcome. Drum roll to the next slide. We could rock. This is the amazing lineup that we have in store for you. But just to go to the next slide of our new members, a warm welcome to Marist College, Framingham, and the University of Kansas. We are delighted that they have decided to join us, and two international members in this mix of five new total. King's College London and University of British Columbia. So I wanted to just we don't typically have room for all of our new members to say hello, but Abby and I were particularly inspired and intrigued by the UBC application and wanted to give them a chance just to say a brief word to introduce themselves. We were looking at maybe squeezing in a whole extra speaker, but in lieu of that, I'm looking for it's Chef David. There you are. So please tell us just a little bit about UBC, 1 or 2 minutes, and why you're excited to join the MCURC. We're thrilled to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Spite. I am the executive chef and culinary director for the University of British Columbia. I'd like to also acknowledge that Danny Corvin is also on the call. She's the associate director of our Kelowna campus. So UBC is thrilled to be part of this collaborative. We are one of the largest universities in Canada. We have two campuses, one on the west coast of the Pacific Ocean in Vancouver, and another one in the interior of our province in the city of Kelowna. We have over 66,000 students in enrollment, and we are also proudly self-operated and have been in our Vancouver campus for decades, maybe even forever. And in 2018, we transitioned to a self-operated food service model in our Kelowna campus as well. And we are, like I said, excited to be part of this collaborative. We've been working really, really hard on our sustainability initiatives for the past decade in partnership with our folks at UBC Sustainability, UBC Wellbeing, and we've been admiring the work both of the CIA. As a graduate of the CIA, I'm personally really proud to be here today, but also admiring the work of Stanford University and so many other great universities that we've been watching from afar in the United States. and also noticing that Guelph is another Canadian member of this collaborative, and they've been doing some really great work as well. So I'll leave it there, but happy to connect, answer any questions at any point afterwards. But thank you for welcoming us, and looking forward to working with you all.
Yes, thank you. I actually didn't know the CIA angle, so that's even extra exciting. And yeah, the size and scale of UBC is particularly intriguing and inspiring, and many other programs that hopefully we'll all get to experience from one another. We have actually both King's College and Guelph on the lineup for today to share insights. So that was part of the idea here. We do have just a plug, save the date if you haven't already, for the October all-member meeting. It's taking place October 15th to 16th with a pre-tour at the amazing Vanderbilt University. And thanks, Chef Brian is here on the call. So we've been working hard with their team to put together that program, and registration will likely open in roughly a month to a month and a half. So keep an eye out, and we hope to see you there. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Abby. I don't think we have time for Q&A, so I'm just going to keep us rolling to share what else is in store for today.
Great. Thank you, Sophie, and nice to see so many of you today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and make some room for our next presenter. I'm Abby Fair-Martino. I'm the Director of Health and Sustainability Programs at the CIA on our Strategic Initiatives team, and I also serve as co-director of MCURC. So happy to introduce our next speaker. We have Rachel Gibson, who is going to be presenting from King's College. So Rachel is a senior lecturer in nutritional sciences in the Department of Nutritional Sciences at King's College in London. And I am going to pass it to Rachel to share what she's been up to and some of her research.
That's great. Thank you. So yeah, it's great to be part of the Menu to Change Research Collaborative. Similarly, we've been kind of aware of what's been going on in the States and also at Reading University for a few years. So yeah, very happy to now join. So let me just, sorry, I'm not a usual Zoom, so I'm just finding out where the share. Sorry. Can someone just direct me to where the share the screen is?
Yeah, it's the green button at the bottom. Yeah.
Okay, I want it. Okay.
As we like to say, we're all multilingual on these platforms, right? We have to depends on your first language.
Okay. Right. Can you see? Let me put in slide. When it goes, can everybody see that? Slides. Is that good? Yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, so I'm going to present an overview of a project. This is something that's in progress at the moment at King's College London. The project's called Root to Tip, and it's looking at reducing waste and increasing fibre within the King's campus. So in terms of a bit of background for the UK, so the UK, in common with the US and many other European countries, we have a high prevalence of preventable deaths, particularly related to poor diet. So obviously one of the biggest contributors that's modifiable is poor diet quality. And the UN has a target to reduce early deaths from these diseases by a third by 2030. So in the UK, and I think this is similar to the US, I mean, in terms of areas of concern, fruit and vegetable intake is woefully low, as is fibre intake. So yeah, we've got in the UK, we've got 1 in 3 of the adult population meeting the guidelines, and for fibre, it's 1 in 10. So yeah, these are really kind of nutrients of concern that tend to get overlooked, particularly fibre, in kind of preference for protein. And then just thinking about waste, so in the UK, there's about 9.5 million tonnes of food wasted per year. On the pie chart on the right-hand side, just broken this down to where this comes from in the UK. So you can see that a lot of this, about a third, is from fresh vegetables and salad. So this is edible food waste. So as since I've been working with King's Food Catering, obviously we're trying to reduce food waste throughout the food chain, but also particularly thinking about what we can do in university catering with applications to other caterers as well. So what we did at King's, this is King's Food staff, so they prepared various fruits and vegetables that are commonly used in food service within King's, and had them prepped as they would be in most catering organisations. This comes back to how chefs are taught to prepare vegetables. So this table shows the percentage waste. This is a percentage weight of when, for example, when we've taken the kiwi fruit, we've weighed the kiwi fruit before prepping, and then after we've prepped, we see that about 21% of the weight of the kiwi fruit is actually in the skin. So obviously being able to utilise these parts of the plants is going to be beneficial to be able to reduce food waste. But if we can use them in human nutrition, so this is obviously going to make, in terms of economically, things go further. But also as a dietitian, my question was, well, actually, are these good sources of fibre? As we know, obviously, this is a nutrient of concern in the UK. So this was the research question, quite ambitious, that we're trying to answer. So can we increase fibre intake and reduce food waste in the UK population by eating more parts of the plants we harvest? So we're starting, obviously, with the King's Food Living Laboratory to test this on a local level on campus, but obviously with greater ambitions going forward. So hopefully there'll be some interest about collaborating on future work. So in terms of the team, so as I mentioned, I've got a background in nutrition and dietetics, particularly interested in public health. So joining me on the team is Fiona Lavelle, who's a researcher and specialises in food choice and behaviour. As we know, a lot about food choice is dictated by kind of what we're exposed to in terms of marketing, and particularly social media. So we've also got collaborative researchers from King's Business School and from the marketing department. And then in terms of thinking about fibre, there's actually very little reliable data in terms of the fibre content of fruits and peels and stalks. So within King's, we have in the facilities of the department, we can test directly in the lab the fibre content. So working with some carbohydrate chemists. And then obviously Graham from King's Food. So the most important thing is we have very tasty food to launch. And the external partner is the University Caterers Organisation in the UK. And then we have an emerging research assistant and two student team members as well. So in terms of an overview of the project, the first stage that started back in September, so we asked King's Food to identify potential route to tip fruit and vegetables. So they identified 12 and then went away to develop these into self-rule recipes. We also then, as I mentioned, had to find out what the fibre content was of these rinds and peels. Those were done by direct analysis in the lab. And then these could be then fed into the nutritional analyses for the recipes. Alongside this, we did some consumer focus groups. I'm going to show very top line information from the focus groups because rinds and peels are not something that's commonly consumed in the UK. And then we've also developed a logo icon that's going to be used to identify route to tip dishes on the recipe and a marketing strategy. So the items are going to launch on the 28th of April within King's Food, and then we're going to be on campus collecting feedback from customers and also using the electronic point of sales data as well to evaluate uptake and acceptability. So just very briefly, in terms of thinking about enablers and barriers to eating traditionally thought of parts of plants that may be seen as waste, we conducted 6 focus groups. This covered 40 individuals across staff and students, with a good split between different occupations across staff. So one of the the 6 themes that that came out of the focus groups, and the first was about who was responsible for food waste and where the responsibility lies. So again, this is thinking about maybe making it everybody's responsibility than seeing it as kind of a particular person's responsibility. The second was about growing food waste awareness and the intention behaviour gap. So a lot of people are maybe aware, but they don't really action them in terms of using food waste. The role of social modelling and route to tip behaviours was also seen as important. So some members of the focus groups had kind of grown up or was using kind of everything of a vegetable, whereas others maybe haven't. And again, it's kind of changing people's perceptions to inform behaviour. These aren't in any particular order, but probably the most important that we're going to go on to look at, to try to get further funding to address, is the safety and edibility concerns around peels and stalks. So while we've used what are safe to consume, there's plenty of parts of plants that aren't safe. But there's also concerns around pesticide usage and safe levels as well. So this is something that we're going to take forward, and interested to find any comments from any members. Then the fifth areas around facilitating route to tip adoption, so giving people tips of how to cook and prepare different parts of plants, so taking away that kind of unknown. And the last is, as we all know, the food needs to be delicious. There's a lot of concern around taste or the texture, or not feeling very well after eating kind of peels and rinds. That's very top line. We are going to publish these results. And we're also going to publish the fibre content as well. So that'll be open access for others to use. Just to show you the icon that we've developed, this is going to be used to highlight route to tip menu items on the King's Food menu. And we're also going to be looking at recognition around the social media messaging we have around the icon as well, and the concept of route to tip. And then just lastly, in terms of grand ambition, so we're starting obviously with King's Food Living Laboratory. If it seems to be acceptable, then we're going to work with TUCO and look at partnering with other university catering organisations in the UK, but definitely this would include anybody with the Menus of Change Research Collaborative as well. Obviously, applications to public sector catering, if this could be adopted in the home, and we're particularly interested in retail as well, because in the UK, a lot of what we buy in terms of fruit and veg is pre-prepared, and they tend to be very trimmed. So for example, broccoli is trimmed to florets and doesn't include stalks. And then ultimately, we're looking for some larger amount of research funding to test this in a larger UK population, to see whether we can actually improve health through fibre intake and reduced waste. So that's very whistle-top store. Please follow us on social media at the hashtag #EatRouteTip. Happy to, I don't know if there's any time for any questions, but contact me. Very interested to hear from members, and very interested if anybody else has had any experience of this. Thank you. Stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. And really interesting to think of that connection between food waste reduction and fiber intake and increased fiber. And I think we'll kind of keep things moving, but I do encourage you all to use the chat just for your reflections here, or any like immediate questions or comments to Rachel. And I, again, just wanted to acknowledge like how wonderful that cross-functional team was, and that you involved folks in the kind of more chemistry side. And that is one of the advantages of conducting this kind of work across departments, at a university setting. And so it's super interesting to see, and thank you for that. So we'll let the chat continue here as I introduce our next speaker. And we will share the presentations with this group afterwards as well too. So not only is this recorded, but you can take a look at the presentation, and certainly follow on social, as Rachel mentioned. So thanks again, Rachel. I would like to now introduce Sadaf Molay, and hopefully I'm saying your name right. Okay, good. From University of Guelph. And Dr. Sadaf is an assistant professor and the Errol Chair of the business in the business of food, if I'm saying that right. And yeah, so University of Guelph was our initial Canadian institution member, and now, of course, we're happy to welcome UBC. So I'm going to pass the floor to Sadaf to share some of the research from their institution.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Sadaf Mollai. I'm an assistant prof at the University of Guelph, located in Canada, and I'm also the researcher in the business of food for Arrow Food Institute, located in the University of Guelph, again in Canada. And I want to talk about our research that's about campus food environment assessment tools today. So basically, the objective of this project that we have is to develop and test a tool to assess university campus food environments and their adherence to different aspects of sustainability, so social, economic, and environmental. And we basically want to see if campuses enable students to have sustainable diets. And so far, the research team is myself and Kamran Nazmobadi, who is a graduate research assistant. And this ways, we are trying to get more stakeholders involved. So the reason that we decided to work on this project is that we all know a transition to more sustainable diet is a promising approach for achieving a sustainable food system. But that means healthy, nutritious food and food with low environmental impact to be readily available and also affordable. And we want to have diverse range of options and a food environment, which is where people make their decisions, is a critical determinant of dietary choices and patterns, and it influences people's decisions. And it's basically the intersection of the food system and the consumer. I'd previously done a study looking into developing and testing an assessment tool for grocery stores across Ontario in Canada. And then we decided to focus this tool on university campuses because they're particularly important in shaping diets of students, which is usually known to be poor. It includes it includes a wide range of different types of retail food outlets, and it's a promising setting to test tools and also to come up with identify strategies that will help with this transformation. So we are at the preliminary stages of this study. We've done the literature review and identified the gaps, and we are in the phase of creating the first draft of the tool. And looking at the literature, there are a variety of different tools out there looking into some specific aspects related to food, so health, nutrition, um, thinking about quality, price, availability, and all that. And some of them are specifically focused on specific venues or geographic locations. And the assessment tool is basically a list of criteria or elements that you would sort of go through and then say if it's available or not available in the location that you're looking at. And then it will receive a score, and then you'll know how much is contributing to the objective that you have. And we looked at previous tools that have been developed and tried to narrow it down to two streams. One, tools that are focused on campus food environments. So the ones that were specifically designed for campus food environments, or the ones that were modification of previous tools, but then modified to be used for campuses. And then we also looked at three specific tools as well that are not for campuses, but they are looking into, they have sustainability measures included in their assessment tool. And The gaps that we identified is basically there's not really a tool that looks into campus food environments while including all, sorry, I'm just going to move this, while including all aspects of sustainability. And what is really missing is the economic aspect and also the policy integration and the governance measures related to that. So we sort of use these three tools that I've highlighted in red as our main reference. Two of them focus on campuses, and then one that has sustainability measures included in the tool. And what we want to create is a tool that's focused on campuses, includes all measures related to food sustainability. It is easy to use, but does not compromise practicality while being accurate. Because there are tools out there that have so much detail and require a lot of information to be used, so then it's not practical to really use it. Another thing that's important for us is to take a weighted approach. So we want to make sure that these elements and criteria that we have in there, they do not have the same level of importance in terms of contributing to food choices. And we want to make sure that we assign proper weights to them. And then two other important parts are, first, we want to include all different types of food outlets that are on campus. So residence cafeteria, buffet style grab and go vending machines, and then also include measures related to different levels of governance. So university controlled food services, outsourced food service providers, and then independent food retailers that are available on campus. And we basically first want to identify those domains or subdomains to be included in the tool, which are the criteria or the elements. And I've underlined the second bullet point here. This is where we're at right now. So we want to collect stakeholder and expert feedback on finalizing the domains and subdomains that we want to include in the tool, and also assign weights to that. And then the tool will be tested in one university, which is University of Guelph. We'll be collecting data through online platforms and visits, and then the tool would be modified as needed. And then again, it will be tested with 2 or 3 trained research assistants to ensure inter-rater reliability. And then we'll finalize the tool and the scoring system, and then that could be used. And this is where we are trying to get more feedback and insight from you folks who are expert in this area of campus food and getting other stakeholders involved. So we have narrowed down the key dimensions that we want to include into governance, the sustainability piece, so environmental integrity, economic resilience, social well-being, and then the actual physical environment. And so far, what we've done is looking into governance, all the 3 levels that I mentioned. So looking into, for example, leadership and planning, policies. So for example, does the university have a policy related to food waste management? Do they have a policy related to energy or water consumption? Thinking about the fundings, where do they get funding? What are some financial resources? Is there a training or skill building program? Stakeholder engagement, do they have student voices into their planning? And then the next set of criteria or domain that we have is looking into specific food outlets. So availability and access and the environmental aspect. Are there plant-based options available? Are there local options available? What kind of packaging is being used? And that is for each specific food outlet. And then finally, the physical campus food environment as a whole. So how many food menus are out there, the different types of them, where are they placed? Is there cultural diversity? Water fountains? Are there any food banks? And all these different aspects. So this is where we're at now, and it's a very high level overview of the work that we've done so far. But, and I know we don't have really time to talk about this today, but this is my contact information. If you have any insights or any feedback or any ideas about things that should be included, not included, and also if you're interested in being part of that expert group to talk about the weighting, I would really appreciate your support, and that this is my email address. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any insights. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shadaf. And as I just put in the chat, I feel like this is such a interesting and relevant project. And I know that we've tried to explore in the past, I think through some of the multi-site research measures of, for example, like how food waste is being measured in different ways, and there's no like shared criteria. And I think that this might apply as well, is that if there's not a kind of agreed upon way to assess sustainability and across a college and across food operations, it can be hard to also measure apples to apples within different kind of parts of the college and university, but across them as well too. So very interesting and relevant project. I encourage folks to reach out to SIDOF and understand how to either support, as you're saying. It sounds like there's a bit, maybe an advisory group that you're forming. Okay, excellent. So thank you so much. I'm very inspired by these projects thus far, and we have 2 more ahead. I'm going to pass it over to Sophie to introduce the next 2. And again, thank you so much, SIDOF.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully, folks know, but for anyone, especially who's new, the purpose of shining a spotlight on these projects is not only to celebrate the great work and get inspiration, but in all honesty, is to seed multi-site projects for the future, right? So I already saw a couple of comments in the chat about let us know if we can kind of collaborate with Rachel's project, right? That's very much the direction that we hope some of this will take. And in the meantime, you get those sort of interim insights to just start to percolate or look into a lead or a new project or product or whatever menu item, whatever it might be. So our next speaker is actually joining us asynchronously. It's Audrey Cosson, who has a PhD in food science and sensory science, and she's a researcher at the Institut Paul Bocuse in France. And we will roll the video, Valentina, whenever you are ready. It's a little under 6 minutes, so enjoy. And thank you so much, Audrey, for being here and taking the time to record this for us.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to present a study aimed at increase legume consumption in the restaurants by optimizing the sensory experience and the presentation of dishes. This work was supported by the Olga Tribala Institute and the Louis Bonduelle Foundation. We conduct this study because despite legumes being a valuable source of plant-based protein with significant health and environmental benefits, they are still rarely featured in restaurant menus. In industrial countries, legume consumption remains low, and this is largely due to the dominant role of meat in diets and the perception of legumes as a secondary food. However, interventions like menu redesign and nudging could encourage greater selections of legume-based dishes. By adjusting the portion of meat and vegetables in restaurants, it's possible to reduce meat consumption while boosting vegetable intake, provided the dishes remain attractive to consumers. Our hypothesis is that reducing meat portions and increasing legume portions in the main course will improve consumer appreciation, that negatively affect appetite, and encourage greater legume consumption, while maintaining high overall satisfaction. Thus, the objective of this study is to investigate the impact of varying meat-to-legume ratio in a main course of food intake, appetite, and consumer appreciation in a restaurant setting. For this objective, the study conducted at the experimental restaurant of Institute Life used a single blind between subject design, and we used culinary arts management students preparing and serving the meals. The experiment focused on varying 3 factors: meat-to-legume ratio, legume type, and meat type across 6 main course combinations. Each meal, standardized with a starter, main course, dessert, bread, and water, was served to participants for €8, simulating a real-world dining experience, while adjusting portion size and food components to assess the impact on dining behavior and perceptions. The study measured participants' hedonic evaluation of the meals, including overall appreciations, appearance, taste, texture, satisfaction with the meal experience. Food intake and energy consumption were also assessed, with rating food before and after consumptions. Subjective appetite profiles were also evaluated for hunger, desire to eat, thirsts before and after the meal. Ingestive behavior was also analyzed through video recordings of meal consumptions with coding for bite and sip counts, bite rate, energy intake, and participant attitude also were analyzed towards meals, legumes, and meat, were using Likert scales on various beliefs and preferences. Here on this table, you can see some of the results. The hedonic evaluation of meals revealed significant effects of the meat to legume ratio on overall liking, taste, and appearance, with higher score for the reference ratio compared to the reduced ratio. The reference ratio received higher score for both overall liking and taste, while the reduced ratio had lower ratings, especially for the appearance of the main course. For meal energy intake, we show no significant difference in intake between the 6 main courses, but a positive correlation was found between meal intake and hedonic ratings. Subjective appetite ratings show no significant differences between the 6 main courses, although gender influenced appetite perceptions, with men reporting higher hunger ratings both before and after the meal. No significant difference was observed in attitudes and beliefs towards legumes between the groups that received different meat to legume ratios. Participants were generally favorable towards legumes, especially in relation to their impact on cell fertility, their essential role in meats, and regular consumption since childhood. The appreciation of legumes was positively correlated with the appreciation of meals. Regarding meat, no significant change was noted in attitudes towards its consumption except for hedonism. The majority of participants agreed that eating meat is an inalienable right, and the results also revealed that meat consumption habits were relatively consistent, but participants were willing to reduce their meat portion to favor legumes, especially among women. A gender difference was observed, with women having a lower proportion of meat on their plate and being more inclined to reduce their meat consumption. To conclude, the major part of this study lies in its ability to influence menu design. By adjusting portions and improving the presentation of legumes, it's possible to increase their consumption, promote public health, and reduce the carbon footprint. What surprised us was that participants react more positively to legumes than expected. The careful presentation and adjust portions play a key role. Reducing meat and increasing legumes did not diminish the appeal of these dishes. So this study paves the way for new strategy to improve the acceptance of legumes in dining establishments. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to contact us if you have any questions.
Awesome research. I just love this study. It's so inspiring in a lot of ways how much the research that is coming out now in many ways comes back to some of the earliest concepts from menus of change, the protein flip, right? This is protein flip and ratios. One of the very first MCURC projects ever was about the kind of what is the right ratio for a blended burger. And of course, it doesn't stop at burgers. I love also the cultural context, right? When I first saw this video, it made me instantly think of the classic French dish of roasted salmon and braised lentils, right? As that kind of really, really compelling presentation of lentils, not a huge portion of salmon, right? But they just go together so well. And kind of the French surf and turf as far I've seen it. But in this particular context, of course, where it's offsetting beef, it's even more critical for a number of reasons. And also, just a sneak peek, it really dovetails with some of the concepts that we're testing in the new Plant Forward Opportunity Report. So we have put all of that. I see Veronica, Food for Climate League, but that's a partnership with Data Central, Food for Climate League, MCURC, and CIA. And that will come out at Menus of Change, I believe, in June. So stay tuned. But the iterations on this theme, there's so much more to learn there. Again, particularly for omnivorous eaters, right, where it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Wonderful. Well, again, thanks to Audrey. And last but not least, I will say the famous Pierre Chandon is with us here today. If you're a behavioral researcher, you kind of geek out and with excitement when Pierre's in the room, so to speak. Really thrilled to have you here and take it away to share your latest project.
Thank you, Sophie. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's been a while. I went to a conference of Menu of Change, but it was back in 2018. And when I was asked what to present, I had a few ideas. I mean, I'm working basically on how nudges can help people choose healthier and more sustainable food. It's not always in the context of dining, although I have a project which is on how preservation options can reduce waste and consumption while increasing sales. But I didn't want to present it because I thought it's in a French context. And so maybe in France, we're not used to having preservation options available much. And I'm also working on Nutri-Score, which is also a very European kind of simplified nutrition labeling in fast food restaurants, looking at disparities across income levels and socioeconomic status. So today I thought to present some work which is probably more universal. It's actually been done with American consumers. It's work with Shemal Doshi, who is a PhD student at INSEAD. For those who don't know INSEAD, we're a business school located in France and Singapore. I'm in France actually right now. And Jad Shaban, who's a colleague at Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. So we're very international. And the question is actually very simple. The question is, should we label, it's about carbon footprint labels, but it really is about any kind of labels. Should we label everything that's available for sale in our restaurants, in our grocery stores? Or should we just let the best products self-select into labeling? And to answer this question, as I'll show, we think the answer is it depends whether consumers are able to kind of guess the carbon footprint of the products. If they can guess, then it's probably enough to let the best products label I'm good or I'm very good. If they're confused, then we actually need to label everything. And this is maybe less of an issue when you're preparing the food and you can choose to label it. But when you have food that's prepackaged, that's prepared by others, and you can also add the label inside the restaurants, then you might wonder, should I put a label on everything or just let the brands decide that? So the background is that all the work that I'm aware of that looks at that nutrition or actually eco-labeling compares two states of the world, one in which there's nothing labeled and one in which everything is labeled, which is just not realistic. Because in real life, the bad products never want to label. If we look, for example, in Australia, there's only 16% of the half-a-star rated products, the worst one, that are labeled versus 61% of the 5-star. And it's really unlikely that it's going to be mandatory to force brands, products to label. And so the question is, when should we really fight to get everything labeled? Or when is it okay to let the market basically and products self-select into labeling? And the hypotheses are the following. Imagine that consumers have some idea about the products. For example, I'll show you, we have two categories. One of them is frozen meals, and you either have plant-based or meat-based. And in this case, it's probably people can guess that meat-based is not the best for the environment. And so what happens in this context is that people who choose the meat-based products, they have revealed that they don't care so much about the environment, and they care more about other things like taste, convenience, price, etc. In this case, labeling is unlikely to change their choices. And as I'll show, it's enough to label the best products. However, if consumers are confused, which occurs a lot around CO2 impact, then you have people who purchase really high carbon emission products that they didn't know. And in this case, quite simply, it really matters to label everything, including the bad products, so to speak, those with high emissions, because you cannot just expect them to label. You have to make it mandatory. That's the idea. I'll just show the results of two online experiments, which is for the full product assortments with 33 or so options. It's a realistic interface, which actually, by the way, freely available. It's something that has been designed by a colleague, but we've actually funded some of it. You'll see in a moment. It's incentive compatible, and we use this My Emission system, but it really doesn't matter. It could have been any other ones to compute the CO2 emissions and to label the products from A to E, green to red, the usual 5-level system. So here's the high CO2 predictability categories because you have plant-based and meat-based, and that we've pre-tested that. Most people have kind of an idea that yes, brown rice and vegetables is going to be better for the planet from a CO2 point of view than chicken enchiladas. But in the other category, which is instant pasta meals, you have in both cases kind of a mac and cheese, and it's really hard to guess, and people really have no clue. So it's a low predictability. I have a third study in which we manipulate predictability, which I won't have time to show. So this is what it looks like. People have 33 options. This is just the first screen. In one condition, nothing is labeled. In another condition, we just label the A and the B products. This is what's happening when you just let the manufacturers decide, and typically only the best label. And in the third condition, you add the C products and a few Ds. So we have 2/3 of the products are labeled. And in the final condition, everything is labeled. And this is when you see the bad ones, the E and the D. And these are the results. On the y-axis here, you have the CO2 emissions of the chosen product in this category. And the good news is that when you go from 0% label to labeling the top third, we found a 16.5% reduction in the CO2 of the chosen product. Now, the interesting news is that there was absolutely no difference after that. So when consumers were able to guess that some products were not so great in terms of CO2 emissions, adding a D and E label saying this product is bad made absolutely no difference. And this is actually important because it also means that from a sales point of view, those products should label because they will see no difference. But from an overall standpoint, what we find is that it's enough to just label the top third. In the other category, the instant meals, the mac and cheese we had, then it was a very different pattern. We see a bit of a bump here. We can go back to it, but mostly a linear effect that the more products are labeled, the lower the CO2 of the chosen products. So here we can see that it really helps to label not just the good ones, but to label the medium and the bad options from a CO2 standpoint. And why? It's because here we have people who bought these D and E products that were unaware that they were bad for the environment. And some of these people cared enough about it that once they learned, they switched. So here's the key results. When consumers are informed, we don't need to make the labels mandatory, which makes it a lot easier because you don't have to argue with the brands and the manufacturers to say, can you label, do you have the right to add a sticker on their packages? Yes, no. And the corollary, which is actually something I'm telling all the food companies, is that if consumers are kind of informed and you have a product that has a poor rating, go ahead and add the bad rating because no one is going to be surprised. You won't lose sales, and you will gain a lot in terms of helping the market because you're being transparent. Who can be against transparency? And you will earn a lot of points for caring about the planet and maybe some reputation. When consumers are misinformed, on the other hand, then there are no shortcuts. We cannot just let the best products decide to label. We have to label everything. Just to finish, if you're interested in also this heterogeneity in labeling effects, this is really a fundamental, almost tautological result, but I found it for nutritional labelings, for environmental labels, everywhere. Labels only work if people care about the underlying benefit that's being labeled. That's why, for example, all the nutrition labels, they work well at getting people from a C to a B or a B to an A, because they work for people who care about nutrition. If you give a nutrition label for people who don't care about nutrition, then you probably won't find any effect, which is what we found in the study in a fast food restaurant in France, for example. And for the same reason, we find that eco-labeling work better for people who are liberals, and because they care more about the environment, as we know. The good news is that we found that they had limited or no effect among more conservative consumers, but there was no backfiring. It's not like people reacted by doing the opposite. The result of this is that if there are pre-existing disparities in nutrition, for example, but also maybe in environmental conscience, labeling, because it works better for people who already care about them, is likely to increase disparities across groups of consumers. So I'll end with that.
Hmm.
And if you're interested, we have not finished writing yet. We're doing it right now. But some of the other work, like this work where we compare liberals and conservatives, is already available on my website.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Wow, I just so appreciate the nuance here because I think in this community and elsewhere, there's this recurring carbon labels work, carbon labels don't work, carbon labels work, carbon labels don't work, versus maybe they work in some contexts with some eaters on some food products or menu items, right? And it can be tough maybe sometimes as an operator to tease that apart, but I think you've done a really nice job of kind of clustering it so that it could be really actionable and showing again it might depend on the situation. Well, again, huge thanks. I think Abby and Valentine, I think we've got time looking at everything else we got to cover. I think we've got about 6 minutes for
Yeah.
Q&A. So if you have a question for one of our speakers who is present, yeah, Christopher Gardner, exactly. It depends. If you have a question for one of our speakers who is present, please raise your hand or type it into the chat. I think some of the questions are being addressed in the chat anyways, but would welcome, yeah, one or two questions off mute.
I have a question, Pierre, and thank you so much for the study. And again, just echoing Sophie, I really love the nuance, within it. Yes, it depends. And here you've shown that by kind of rewarding with positive labeling, that might be sufficient for people to intuit. And I wonder, are you planning to test this, or have you tested it on another product type other than a frozen food? Or do you think it would carry over in the same way to kind of a fresh meal or something similar?
Yes, so the third study I chose not to present because there was little time, looks at fresh food, freshly cut food, fruits. And it was a good category because some people really focus on the provenance. And they say, if it's local, it's going to be better from a CO2 standpoint than if it's imported. Other people kind of look more at, the kind of fruit. So it was easy for us to manipulate beliefs. And what we found here is, again, if people are confused and they can't really tell because we provide confusing information, and which is often what consumers have access to, then you must label everything. If consumers kind of have some idea, for example, if they think, imported fruits are probably worse from a CO2 standpoint, then really what labeling does is it only helps people who are already going to choose between an A or B or C product because they care about the environment. And labeling the bad products, means that we're talking about people who have chosen them knowing they're imported and not so great for the environment, and have revealed through their preferences, to their choices, that they care about other things than environment. And so I don't think it's specific to these categories. We have frozen meals. The other one was instant meals. They were not frozen. They were shelf stable. I don't think it's the product per se. It's really more about consumers' beliefs and the ability to guess the environmental impact of the product.
Interesting. Great. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Pleasure.
Yeah, any other questions? You can, again, raise your hand or type into the chat. I'll go ahead then and follow Abby's lead with a question for Rachel, actually. I'm super intrigued, as I noted in the slide or in the chat, just about this maximum nutrition, minimum waste. Like there seems to be so much here in terms of I'll just use an example. I have a friend who has an oat milk company, Willa's, if you've ever heard of it. And she for a long time was saying that, it is the most untold food waste story, how bread or just how grains are processed, including, oat milk in some contexts. I'm not here blaming anybody on oat milk, just to be very clear about that. But that hers actually uses, all of it and whatnot. This is, again, not a plug for that. But the point was that it was like, wow, the germ and the bran are like the most nutritious parts, and they're the waste products of sort of making the valuable products of crackers or whatever else it is. So I just was curious for your thoughts. Like, has this made you almost take this lens to other types of, you focus on fiber, but just like more broadly? Are you exploring in terms of other areas, or are you working with other researchers, and kind of what's that trajectory looking like from your side?
So definitely fibre, because that is a nutrient of concern in the UK. So that was kind of, and I'm quite obsessed with fibre and trying to increase fibre intakes. I think we focused on fruit and vegetables because that is kind of we've got control over that in preparing. So I know there's other kind of into grains, and there's some really good companies looking at initiatives. We're kind of thinking about what could be done in caterers, but potentially at home as well. So fibre, we're looking at the different fractions of fibre. We've got the total fibre. So some of the dishes, when we calculate them, can be kind of up to 15% increase from using rinds and peels compared to the flesh where we've swapped out. We are looking at other nutrients. We're also looking at potentially unintended consequences. So if certain peels and rinds may be high in phytates, they could potentially bind to other nutrients. So I think we've always got to be aware when we put in, testing ideas in terms of scalability. So a lot of this comes down to funding. So we've only looked at 12 fruits and vegetables so far. We want to expand that. We want to then look at maybe polyphenols or other nutrients, but then thinking about kind of if people are eating them on a regular basis, putting something into the food system that's not there at the moment. So looking at kind of that side, particularly around consumers' concerns around pesticides as well, and what can be washed off and what can't be washed off. So yeah, definitely only touching the surface of what we can do, because this is a very small seed award that was internally funded by King's. But yes, very interesting to explore further.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully you will get more funding to carry this on, because I think that this is just an incredibly exciting area. All right, to bring us home, just a couple final notes. Oh, you're on mute, Abby.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Thank you again for being here. So just a couple quick plugs at the end. I look forward to seeing many of you at the Menus of Change Summit in June. It's June 4th and 5th this year, and we will have MCURC members on the stage and leading a breakout session as well. We hope to see you there. You can still register. I will, and then there's a discount for MCURC members. It's MCURC. And so hope to see you there. And we will invite you to, if you do attend, we'll invite you to a special reception for our collaborative members. Upcoming within the MCURC engagement calendar, which I'm going to drop in the chat if I can find the chat again here on my screen. Our next Insights Exchange is June 18th, and that is on a Wednesday. And this focus is going to be on seafood, so increasing and kind of diverse consumption of seafoods, including sea vegetables. And so we'll have some member presentations. If you have a case study or something you'd like to feature, please let us know, and we would love to include you in the next Insights Exchange. And then we have an upcoming town hall meeting that is on July 8th, which is a Tuesday. The purpose of the town hall meetings is to invite all members to come together, and then we create breakout groups for the different professional affiliations. So academic members can gather together, sustainability directors, chefs, dining directors, etc. And then we come back together to share our reflections and what was discussed in the group. So it really creates a really nice virtual touch point for our members. And then just a final plug again, our annual meeting is at Vanderbilt in October. Registration will open in May, and we encourage many of you to attend. This is going to be a wonderful annual meeting, as it always is. This year will feature some really interesting experiential moments as well. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. We'll follow up with the recordings and the presentations. And thanks for being here. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Thanks all.